It was the kind of neighborhood where everything seemed to move at a slower pace. Peaceful, calm, with children playing outside, neighbors greeting each other on their morning walks, and the occasional dog barking in the distance. A perfect little town, the kind you could imagine yourself growing old in. But what people didn't see, what most of us chose to ignore, was that underneath the surface, things were changing. Something was lurking beneath the quiet, something that, if we were honest, had been there all along. I remember the day Sarah moved in across the street, though at the time, I didn't know how much it would change everything. She was in her early 30s, not much older than me, with dark hair and a smile that could light up a room. On the outside, she looked like she had everything together: a successful career, a stable home, and a sense of ease about her that drew people in. I hadn't seen Emily in a while. We used to be close, living just a few blocks away from each other, but after her divorce from Brian, she kept to herself more. It wasn't hard to see that she wasn't in a good place. Emily was always the life of the party, the one who could brighten any room, but after the divorce, there was a shift in her. She didn't seem to bounce back as quickly as everyone expected. People would whisper that it was just a matter of time before she moved on, but I knew better. Divorce doesn't always heal so easily, especially when the past never stays buried. I started to notice it a few weeks after Sarah settled in. Emily had been coming over more, her eyes a little more frantic each time. She'd ask about Sarah, where she was from, who she was dating, if she had kids. She'd ask me, like it was casual, but I could see that something was bothering her. We didn't talk about Brian much anymore, not since the divorce had become public knowledge, but it was clear that her mind was stuck on him, on their past, and now, Sarah. "She seems so perfect, doesn't she?" Emily asked me one evening, her voice tight, like she was trying to keep it together. "Sarah, I mean, just so put together." I nodded, unsure of what to say. "Yeah, she does seem like she's got everything under control." Emily's fingers drummed nervously on her coffee cup. "I think Brian likes her more than he ever liked me." I knew this wasn't about Sarah. Not really. Emily had always had a way of turning everything back to her own insecurities, her fears about not being enough, even when she didn't realize it herself. And this obsession with Sarah, it was just the latest chapter in a much older story. Her inability to move on, to let go of what she couldn't have. But things didn't stop there. Over the next few months, I started noticing Emily's presence more and more around Sarah's house. She'd run into her while walking her dog, or she'd find excuses to go to the local market when she knew Sarah would be there. I didn't think much of it at first. People make friends in strange ways. But there was something about the way Emily would watch Sarah from across the street that felt off. It wasn't a casual glance. It was as though she couldn't take her eyes off of her. Then came the day I saw it for myself. I had just come home from work when I noticed Emily standing outside Sarah's house, staring at the front door. There was an intensity to her gaze that was almost unsettling. I called out to her, but she didn't hear me. I walked closer, my stomach sinking as I realized what I was seeing. "Emily," I called, more loudly this time. She snapped out of her trance, startled. Her face flushed, and she quickly turned away. "Oh, hey, didn't see you there." "What are you doing?" I asked, a little more sharply than I intended. "You've been standing here for a while." "I just wanted to see if Sarah was home," she said, her voice wavering. "You know, I thought maybe we could, I don't know, talk." Her eyes shifted nervously, avoiding mine. I knew there was more to it than that. I had seen this behavior before, obsessive tendencies, an inability to let go. But this was different. Emily wasn't just struggling with her past anymore. She was beginning to unravel. It didn't take long before things started to escalate. Emily's visits to Sarah's house became more frequent, more deliberate. She would show up at all hours, pretending to need something from her, asking for advice on small things, anything really, that would allow her to be near her. But it wasn't long before Sarah started noticing the strange behavior. One afternoon, I saw Sarah talking to Emily on the sidewalk. The conversation was tense, but I couldn't hear what they were saying. I saw Sarah's expression change to one of frustration, and Emily's face twisted with something I couldn't quite place. I wanted to intervene. I knew Emily was struggling, but I didn't know how much further she would go to get Brian back, or how deep her obsession had become. I should have said something sooner. But then, the letter came. It was a simple, unsigned note, left on Sarah's doorstep. "You don't belong here. You never will." That was the moment I knew Emily had crossed a line. She wasn't just upset anymore. She was consumed with rage, and I had a sinking feeling that things would only get worse. By then, Brian had started to notice the changes in Sarah too. He knew that something was wrong, but he didn't know what to do. He tried talking to Emily, telling her to let go, to move on. But every time he'd reach out, she'd push him away, and that made her angrier. It only fueled the fire. One night, everything came to a head. The quiet town we all thought we knew was shattered when a scream pierced the night. I rushed outside to find police cars surrounding Sarah's house. Sarah, pale and shaken, was sitting on her front steps while officers tried to calm her down. She was shaking, but I could hear her words even from a distance. "I don't know what happened. I didn't think she would actually do it." When they arrested Emily, her face was blank, as though she hadn't processed what had just happened. Her hands were covered in something dark, but I didn't want to know what it was. I didn't want to believe it. It turned out that Emily had snapped, had tried to hurt Sarah in a way that would leave a mark on all of us. In her mind, she was still in competition for Brian's love. She had crossed a line that no one ever saw coming. The investigation revealed the depths of her obsession. No one had realized how much she'd been holding in. No one had understood the weight of her grief, her unprocessed trauma. In the end, it wasn't just Sarah's happiness Emily wanted to destroy, it was herself. The town was never the same after that. People whispered about what had happened, about the quiet woman who lived next door, who no one suspected could ever do something so terrible. And every time I passed by Sarah's house, I couldn't help but wonder if we could have done more, if I could have done more. It wasn't just a story about a love triangle. It was a story about someone who never got the help they needed in time. And now, as I stand here, I realize that sometimes the quiet ones, the ones you think are fine, are the ones who are holding everything together with string and hope. And when that thread snaps, it takes everything with it.